All right, we're going to go ahead and call this to order, and we pretty well know everyone, but we always start with introductions. So, Howard, you're our host.
That's a long thing.
Howard Bauman, Port Sheldon Township.
Tom Elhart Road Commission. Glenn Nykamp, Zero Township.
Russ Teslau with the MACC Authority Board.
John Clark, Allegan Road Commission.
Jim Story, Allegan County Board of Commissioners.
Nancy DeBoer, Mayor Polland.
David Vankenhoven at large.
Steve Boltice, Executive Director of the MACC.
Terry Hoffmeyer, Laketown Township.
Terry Nienhuis, Holland Township.
Kevin Kleinstra, City of Zealand.
Skip Keeter, Park Township.
And Ken DeWeert, Fillmore Township.
Rob Nick with the MACC.
Carolyn Alston with the MACC. Kelly Goward with the MACC. Elisa Hookwater with the MACC.
Jack Thompson, Park Township.
Paul Sachs, Iowa County Planning.
Welcome, everyone. All right. You've all seen the minutes. If there's a motion, we can move through that. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you very much. Okay, any public comment? Mr. Thompson? No? Nope. Okay, very good. All right. Okay, transportation program, I believe, Elisa, you're going to lead us off.
Good afternoon, everyone. Today I'm going to give you a report on our obligated projects, and in your packets I included a memorandum and a list of projects. So basically we're just going to be summarizing that material. The great news is there were 23 projects that were obligated in the fiscal year 2017. And the total amount of federal funds that came into the MACC area was $6.4 million. The total project cost for all of the transportation projects in the list were $11.1 million. So that includes state as well as federal, local as well. So this is a time that we definitely want to thank each of the agencies that were responsible for implementing these projects. As you all know, when we have federal funds that come into our area, we want to make sure that they're obligated and put to good use and not returned. So we've made use of all of our funds this year with no funds remaining. So are there any questions regarding that list of projects? All right, and I did want to mention that this is an action item. Once you've had the opportunity to review the list and make a motion to approve it, we will then post it on our website and be able to share it with the public and let them know what was accomplished in 2017. And two things I wanted to mention as well is that this does not necessarily mean that the projects were constructed in 2017. Two of the projects were advanced construct, so they were actually constructed ahead of time, but funding was allocated this last year. So.
Any questions for Elisa? Okay, we're looking for a motion then to approve. Any further discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Thank you, Elisa.
Yes, and I certainly want to reiterate our gratitude for all the, thank you, implementing agencies getting their program out. You know, it is surprising when I gather with my peers. We have a statewide MPO association, and you know how many of them lament the fact that their agencies don't get their program out. And it's not typically that it associates with the size of the entity. You know, the SEMCOG, the Detroit, Southeast Michigan, you know, has the most difficult time. But surprisingly, even some of the smaller MPOs have a difficult time getting their program 100% obligated. We are able to do so again. So thank you very much. We're several years in the running now with that. If you had a chance to take a look at the memo included in your agenda packet regarding this next agenda item, you had a chance to see that I have been invited by the city of Hudsonville to join a group that included participation from Holland and Granville and Georgetown and Hudsonville and Grand Rapids to talk about the potential for looking at public transit service on the Holland to Grand Rapids corridor along M121. So this is the impetus for this gathering was from the city of Hudsonville, who is looking at having some kind of public transit in their community, or at least linking their community to other communities. And so they brought us all together. So we've had a couple sessions at this point, and essentially what it's boiled down to is a desire to update a transit study that was done several years ago, coordinated by Ottawa County Planning Department. And this particular effort looked at the commuting patterns and the potential for public transit between Holland, Grand Rapids, and Muskegon. And the thinking on this one, so a component of this study was to look at commuting patterns between Holland and Grand Rapids. So as this group kind of talked about this a little bit more, some members of the group, I think, had already kind of jumped to a particular mode of transportation that they most preferred, and that was looking at some kind of a rail option. I think the rest of the group kind of pulled them back a little bit and said, why don't we just take a look at the potential demand in the corridor between Holland and Grand Rapids and start there, and then maybe once we know what the demand is, we can fit it to the appropriate mode of transportation. So I think that's where we landed. And this effort, which was, as I mentioned, coordinated by Ottawa County, it was done by Larry Strange from M2 Planning. Larry's done a lot of work for MACC as well. I think he does good work at it. It's a real value for what he charges. He's very knowledgeable about the field. He had done this, so we reached out to him and said, Larry, what would it take to kind of refresh the data that was in this effort here? I mean, this effort and the data associated with it was recession and post-recession type of data. The area has grown a lot more, so we think it's logical to take a look at the most current data for that. And so he came back with a number of 11,500 to kind of take, again, just the Holland Grand Rapids component of this study and update it a little bit. Do some outreach to various stakeholders along the corridor as well, and just update that. And let's see what the new data shows in terms of potential demand for public transit along the M121 corridor between Holland and Grand Rapids, and then go from there. So the request that came to the MACC, or as we talked about this, I should say, the cost splitting that went on, was $2,500 for us. And if you had a chance to look at the memo, as I discussed this a little bit with the executive committee, we thought there are a couple important stipulations that should be attached to any contribution the MACC should make, and those are enumerated there. The first one is that, Grand Rapids, some type of Grand Rapids-based entity should be part of this effort. So whether that's their economic development folks, the Right Place folks, whether our counterpart, the MPO in Grand Rapids, the Grand Valley Metro Council wants to kick in, or their chamber, whomever, but there needs to be some Grand Rapids-based entities participating as well. And also, we felt the same regarding a Hudsonville-based entity or entities. I mean, they were the ones that kind of brought us out together. They wanted to get this going. We wanted to make sure that they had some skin in the game as well. And then lastly, and just in terms of proportional share of the cost, we had in there that we wanted the Hudsonville entities to at least match dollar for dollar what the MACC is being asked to pay as well. And then lastly, I was a little concerned because this is kind of very exploratory and a kind of a baby step. If it comes back, there is a reason to believe that we should get into a larger initiative, and now we're looking at $100,000, $150,000, $200,000 study. I didn't want us to be perceived by participating in this that we're just automatically going to participate in a future larger initiative. So this is, a standalone type of obligation. So, in checking last week to see how the fundraising was going, I just want to report to you that the City of Hudsonville and their council has committed to $5,000 towards the effort. The City of Holland is going to be contributing $1,000. The City of Zeeland has committed to $1,500. The Grand Valley Metropolitan Council has committed to at least $2,500, and the Granville City Council is going to consider a request this week for $1,000. So, a majority of the funding has either been committed already or is in process, so I feel, fairly comfortable that they're going to be able to reach the $11,500, which is important because if there's were to lead to the next phase in a larger initiative, there is funding available from MDOT for service delivery new technology grants. So funding at the state level, which is earmarked exactly for this type of purpose, to look at the feasibility of new service and so forth. That grant, I believe, is due, Shannon said, in the middle of February or so. So we need to, get this done and see if there's even any reason to look at a second phase. So it's important that all the actors, act on this and move forward. So that's the request. As you saw, my recommendation is that we contribute this. It can come out of our federal planning dollars. I mean, this is well within the work program that we have in terms of technical assistance, so it would be eligible for federal planning dollars, and with all the other local match that's coming in from other participants, there'll be money available to match the federal dollars, which would be important as well. So we've got room in the budget to do that, and my recommendation is to be a party to this. I think it is important to keep a good eye on the commuting patterns between Holland and Grand Rapids. They're changing. We know they're actually increasing. Certainly over the last decade or so, those two worker households, seem to be located in the eastern end of the MACC, and one worker's heading to Grand Rapids and one worker is coming in to the MACC area. So I think it's important to continue to analyze this, and for the cost involved and the person who's doing it, I feel comfortable making that recommendation to allocate that $2,500.
Is the city of Hudsonville a member of the Metro Council, or are they part of an NPO?
Yes, part of that council.
Part of Grand Valley?
Yeah, I will say that, I was chiding my counterpart a little bit. I was saying, hey, wait a minute, we're putting in $2,500 or considering $2,500. You guys are, several magnitudes larger than us. So that's when he said, well, yeah. He goes, we'll for sure match you guys, but I think they're probably going to make up whatever is not covered by the other people that are being asked.
So is this project being done more spearheaded by the city of Hudsonville or by Metro Council?
Well, there's a city of Hudsonville that sent out the invitations. Patrick Waterman, the city manager there, brought the group together at the request, I think, of his mayor and council. I think they're very interested in having public transit. A millage vote there didn't work out an election or two ago, but they're feeling they're kind of caught right in the middle of this Holland, Grand Rapids dynamic, and, want to be able to engage and be involved in that somehow. And of course, from our perspective, we've had some of our major employers haven't contacted me directly, but certainly through MACC. I mean, we've had CEOs from a couple of our major employers call MACC and say, please help us. Next to getting employees to pass a drug test and childcare, transportation is right up there in terms of barriers that they're running into with getting employers. So I think it helps, our area employers as well to just take a look at this. And this step to me is essential before jumping into anything more comprehensive. Other questions?
Okay.
Nancy, do you have a question?
Well, this does not include Muskegon, so it's
No.
just going to be,
Yeah, this is just looking at Holland. And when I say Holland, Grand Rapids, we're talking about Zeeland, of course, Hudsonville, Granville's interested in it, probably Jenison, Georgetown Township along there as well. We'll be looking out. But it is just that M121 corridor.
so anybody that would want to stop for this system would be paying toward the study.
Yeah, I don't know if everyone, I don't see Georgetown, potentially there would be a stop. And with a service like this, of course, you're competing, if we get into this, looking at the feasibility of it, time is very important to people. So it has to be fairly close in terms of the equivalent of what it would take for a private vehicle for for the choice rider, those who have other choices. Well, if you take off from Holland and stop in Zeeland and stop in Hudsonville and stop in Granville and stop in Jenison before you get to Grand Rapids, that really extends the trip time, and then doesn't make it nearly as competitive. For the transit captive rider who doesn't have another alternative, they'll still do it, but a choice rider, much less likely to do so if it takes, 50% longer to make the same trip than it does.
Good, thank you.
Other questions? Okay, you're looking for a motion to approve the MACC to contribute $2,500.
Yes.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you, Steve.
All right. Want to give you a quick update on another initiative that the MACC is supporting, and that is the age-friendly transportation for Holland-Zeeland. You may recall that a group got together, a community-wide initiative, to take a look at an update to age-friendly community initiative that had been done several years ago. That happened in February. That group met a couple times and kind of identified two areas where they thought seniors and the intersection of the issue with seniors was important. There were two: housing and transportation. They felt that the Housing Next effort was really doing a good job on the housing, so this group decided to focus on transportation. And so that's where we kind of focused our efforts, and you can see the vision statement that came out from that group, to provide affordable, accessible, convenient, and safe transportation for all older adults in the greater Holland, New Zealand area. So, that's a pretty bold vision, right, when you start to take a look at that. But that's what we've been working under, and the Community Foundation provided a very nice grant to do some work related to this. Community Spoke is the lead agency on it, and one of the efforts with that grant money, as well as some of our financial support, was to do a phone survey of seniors. So seniors in this case is defined as 65 years and older, and a phone survey was conducted by VIP Marty Hill, the former Frost Center director, has his own shop now, and did a survey for us. The survey, overall was, I think, well done. It was overwhelmingly white in that regard, and the gender was over representation in terms of females, but pretty good geographic distribution. The cities were a little overrepresented. Holland Township in particular was a little underrepresented, but otherwise, overall, it was well done, about a 95% confidence level with it. So fairly comfortable with the results that came out of that. And just a couple key data elements to share with you that came out of this phone survey of seniors. We found that about 11% have some level of difficulty with transportation. So if we think about seniors 65 and older, that cohort is about 13 to 14,000 in the overall MACC area of 124,000. So when we talk about 10-11% of that cohort, you're talking around 1,500 individuals. So not a large population that we're talking about, but still significant. We found that within that population, the survey results, 85% are still driving their own vehicles. It was kind of interesting, a couple of factors, I think, for those of us on the MACC board that was enlightening and we need to be thinking about in our MACC work on the board, is that 63% were unaware that if you're older than 65, you can ride the fixed routes on MACC for free. But a little more concerning was, that a third of the respondents were not aware that MACC had a curb-to-curb service. So there's a few things in the marketing end that MACC can do that came out of this survey as well. But the last one that I think was a key finding for the group was that 43% stated that they're not likely to consider MACC transit if they're no longer driving on their own. So a follow-up question to those respondents was, well, how do you plan on getting around? And the vast majority said friends and family. We intend to rely on friends and family to provide and provide our transportation needs. So that was very interesting, and a lot of them don't want to use transit and MACC transit, and so of course there were some follow-up questions as to why that is the case, and I think this is illuminating for those on the MACC board as well. And most of the items that were noted by the respondents, MACC is aware of already. In some cases they want to go down to Lake Town or maybe come up to Port Sheldon. MACC doesn't provide service currently to those areas. The reserve of MACC, the window that's required for pickup and drop off, they didn't find convenient. That was another barrier or inhibition for using MACC. Again, the convenience, MACC is a reserve ahead. You have to reserve by 4 p.m. the day before travel. Folks wanted that same day service flexibility, so that was another barrier to using MACC. And you can see the other Sunday service not having shelters at all the stops and so forth. So I think, and Russ, jump in if you disagree, but I think MACC is aware already of a lot of these concerns that riders that create a barrier to the service. I would say that's fairly fair in that regard.
The marketing team is working on different ways of being able to hit those focus groups. And sometimes there's barriers even to getting a discussion group in certain areas. And just recently, some of those doors have been opened up and said, yeah, come on in and we'll give you some meeting space to meet with a group. So whether that's at the Evergreen Commons or wherever else. But this information is always good.
Yeah.
And you always think you're doing a great job of helping people understand, but until you get to that perception of what they really act upon, that's the key factor there. So,
and it'd be interesting going forward too that friends and family are going to need to let some of the seniors know that they're not available or that there are other.
So everybody at the table here should expect a lot of phone calls from your parents and brothers and sisters that they might need a ride someplace, and you can refer them to MACC, and we'll gladly try to help out.
So the group certainly, and I want to make very clear that this group is, I think, been very respectful of MACC and its constraints and operating limitations. That I don't feel like going to those meetings and really getting beat up badly or those things, but they are interested and willing to look at other solutions that don't exist today. And as they've looked at some of the responses why folks don't want to use MACC, they start to think about, okay, what are some of the elements that might be involved in providing something that complements MACC, and things that come on is there something that can provide same-day service? Is there how do people access this? We're talking about a senior population today that doesn't use smartphones, so a phone call-in system may be the best option for accessing type of service. Is it going to be a shared ride service like MACC, or is it going to be an individual service more like a private taxi? What is the ability of different services to provide accommodations to persons with disabilities? And will the different services provide door-to-door service as opposed to curb-to-curb service? So a number of things that they're looking at, trying to respond to some of those barriers that people had noted with using MACC. And right now the group is kind of looking nationwide at different potential solutions for seniors. And of course, you have the services available today with Lyft and Uber, and what might they provide. Lyft especially has stepped into the space of providing and accommodating seniors. So there is a service there. I kind of like this one, Go Grandparent. Kind of an interesting name. So we're looking at various things. The last one here, though, I think is the one that may have the most promise. RideLink is a service already provided in Kent County, and it's essentially a brokerage service. So a senior can call in and talk to a live person who then says, okay, you want to take a trip to this destination at this time, this is what you're able to pay, and then can go through a matrix and say, okay, this transportation provider can meet the requests or demands of that particular trip. So it's worked quite well there. The public transit provider, ITP, provides that RideLink service. It's countywide in Kent. And I think the group is going to take a hard look at what would be the possibility of implementing something like that in Ottawa County. So that is where the group is at right now. It really doesn't have a timeline as to when it's going to end its work. I mean, we're coming up on the 1-year anniversary here in February. I think it's going to extend a little bit beyond that. But I just wanted to give you a quick update on, what that group is doing and where I think, potentially might go in the future. Any questions on that?
The one thing that really struck me in their presentation was the how of communicating, that having a senior meeting with seniors who experienced the service was way more effective than anybody else coming from anywhere with whatever to show them. So, because they talk the same language and have the same kind of experiences, so getting influencers from those groups seem like, like if you're going to Evergreen Commons, find some key person there, have them do whatever it is you want communicated, and then have them communicate for MACC. And, do that with every people group that you want to connect with, so that you're not like the missionary telling them to become American and they live in Africa kind of thing. And I think that would really, and maybe how we put it on TV, the public broadcasting, that it should be said by people that are up here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, to that point, I think MACC should really kind of consider some type of maybe ambassador program where, you have senior riders go in, and Nancy's referring to a focus group besides the phone survey. This group has been doing some focus groups, and they were sharing that in some of these focus groups with seniors, people are concerned, perceived, inconvenience or safety or other drawbacks of MACC, and then there's a person in the group who uses MACC and starts saying, well, you can get a travel buddy while you're learning to use the system, and usually your pickup time was within 5 minutes. I mean, the system says a half an hour or 45 minutes, but usually they come within, and they said, the dynamic in that group really changed once you had a user, sharing with the rest of the group. So, yeah, I think that's important. So, yep.
I want to talk a little bit about shelters. One of the things that I see, and I'm sure everybody does, is the folks that have to stand out in the rain and the last week in this miserable weather. I wish there was a way that we could somehow, as a community, build some shelters, at least for the busier stops. And Russ and I have been talking about that a little bit. They're not cheap. They're about $11,000 a piece, if I got your information right. But wow, it sure your heart goes out to the people standing there in the rain and in the weather, and I don't know how we can do that as a community, but it's something to think about anyway.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and MACC, of course, has some funding as part of their capital improvements to do a couple, and they do have them prioritized. But we have had a number of organizations step forward and provide shelters. That happened at Holland Hospital, that happened at the shelter next to Gentex, where those organizations stepped forward. Meyer was another one, where they said, we'll pay for it. We see the benefit of it, and did that. So, and we've actually had a community member give a donation to provide, I think 3 or 4 of them were funded from that as well. So, yep. Oh, it's important. I mean, passenger amenities has an influence on ridership. So.
Is there like a little plaque in there if a company or people donate the bus shelter?
So I'm familiar with the 2 at Holland Hospital and Gentex, and neither of them have any type of. Yeah, the authority is fairly cautious about what is posted in there and placed, in those types of things, and we want to make sure that they're cleaned as well, and so they stay in good shape.
Yeah, I got communications about that too, and it just tears your heart out when you drive by and there's some little lady trying to hang on to her coat, and it's just terrible, and the cars are slopping all over her. Yeah, it's a need.
All right, thank you, Steve, appreciate it. We're going to move into the watershed portion of the meeting.
Well, actually, Mr. Redmond has arrived.
He has, all right.
So
I always underestimate how long it takes me to get out here. I'm very bad at that. I'm not sure all the subjects that you hit, but I guess what I talk about is that coming up pretty quick is our 5-year program where we had another year. I even forget where we're at now, but I think we're about to 22. So at some point we're going to bring that out and distribute that to all of you, let you review it, have some comments or questions and everything else. I don't mention this quite a bit, but I mentioned that technical, so I'll mention it here again, that working with MACC staff, we've got our distribution of our maps out for the trail maps. I'm not sure, maybe Elisa, you could help me out here, how many have went out to your members. But if you haven't got them, we're working together to try to get those maps out, as well as recognition of our plan. Because the plan, we think, as I've said here many times, it's an important document. Now it's done. Mostly the access to it's online. We can work together to get that information out to you, but we want the maps and the plan to be commonplace. Because one of the things I think the map does for local agencies here is that if you're about to do a project of some sort and you want to, you run into a group that wants to see some non-motorized, we don't put exact routes on there, but we gave ideas. If there's an east-west route needed in one portion of the county, we did identify that with a broad arrow, but it gives the idea that this is where it's actually needed. So there's a lot of good things to that plan, a lot of good work. I think it's very credible given how much public participation and stakeholder participation we had in it. So we want to see it used. We're going to work hard on that, and then also getting the maps out. So I guess other than that, I think that's all I got today. So, and I'll have to remember to leave earlier next time I come out. Every time.
It's just, you made it.
It drives me crazy. But anyway, sorry about that.
Thank you, Steve. All right, Kelly.
All right, so first I wanted to provide just a brief update or overview of our phosphorus total maximum daily load annual report. So there was a memo in your packet that had a little summary of that. But this is something that we are required to do per the voluntary agreement that we signed with the State Department of Environmental Quality. In 2000, that agreement was renewed in 2010. So every year on November 1st, we submit a report of our progress. So our goal is to reduce phosphorus by just over 91,000 pounds per year. The number in the memo, I don't know where that came from. That is wrong. 91,000 is the correct number. The memo said 83.5. So I apologize for that, but this is the correct number. And then really our ultimate goal is looking at that in-lake concentration of 50 parts per billion. So through the work that we do, we kind of track both of those numbers. We can estimate how much we're reducing phosphorus inputs based on the practices that we implement, and that's primarily based on models. So we put in a wetland restoration, we can run a model that says how much phosphorus that wetland will take out of the system. Or same thing for cover crops or reduced tillage, how much phosphorus will be saved by those practices. So those are all model based. And then the in-lake concentration would be based on actual measurements. So we report all of that information within the report, including both point and non-point source information. So from our non-point source, we have from agricultural practices, so that's everything that we do under our grant programs, what Project Clarity is doing, and then we do try to get information from our other partners that might be working in the watershed, primarily the Natural Resources Conservation Service, if they're implementing practices. So we gather numbers from everybody and put them in a table that's in the report, and then we have this total. So over the past year, we estimate that we reduced phosphorus just over 4,500 pounds on the agricultural side. And then on the urban side of things, and in particular from Ottawa County Water Resource Commissioner's Office. They provided some information about projects that were installed, more kind of green infrastructure, some stream bank work that they did in drains that, again, we can estimate a phosphorus reduction, so we did have those numbers to report as well. And then I have a 6-year kind of running total since I started with the MACC of just over 19,000 pounds. A lot of assumptions go into these numbers. We're assuming that 19,000, if we're going to say that, we're assuming those practices are done every year, which may not be the case. There's going to be a lot of fluctuation depending on the practice itself, especially on the agricultural side of things, where cover crops may not necessarily be used every year. So that's why these numbers are our best guesses. We really need to look at what is happening in the water with the monitoring data. So again, there's the non-point source data. Any questions about that? I do have a chart of the point source data we can look at real quick, but any questions about the non-point source side of things?
Kelly, that over 19,000 pounds less, what percentage is that of the total, do you know?
Right, well, that's 91,000 is what we're trying to get to. So what is that? I can't do that kind of math in my head. What's that, like 20%, 10%? So we're trying to get to 91,000, so.
I mean, I'm talking the total amount of phosphorus.
Right.
And we're 19,000.
Yeah, and that's, again, it's really hard to measure that. Like, we don't know how much phosphorus is actually going into the lake every year. We just know we kept 19,000 pounds out in the past 6 years.
So we're better.
Right.
And we're getting better yet.
Yeah, and then I'll show some of the monitoring data. That data is certainly showing that we are making progress. So this is a chart, if you can see the colors. This is our point source data. So we have a number of primarily industrial point source discharges of phosphorus in the watershed. The 4 major contributors when we started in 2000, or the TMDL started in 2000, are listed here. CDR went offline in 2007, so that's dropped out. So now it's just the 2 water treatment plants, the clean water plant in Zealand and wastewater treatment plant in Holland, and then Meade Johnson are our 3 major contributors. And so Holland takes up the majority, Zealand, and then a little bit from Meade Johnson. 2016 here was a little bit higher than normal because of the upgrades that were being made at both treatment plants. In processing, some of the parts of the system went down and weren't as efficient, but 20,000 is their limit, so they still are operating well below the limit as prescribed in the total maximum daily load. The number here for 2017 is only through October. It's not the full calendar year, so that will be updated next year. But I think they're on track to be lower in 2017 than it was in 2016. So we're certainly not really concerned about the point source dischargers. They are operating well below their required limits and are doing things to make improvements to their systems. And then finally, the monitoring data. We don't have any published data from 2017 yet. That report will come out probably in January or February, but the 2016 data, so this is from the Project Clarity dashboard report. Project Clarity started monitoring in 2013, so these are their numbers. These are historic numbers from the DEQ. And again, 50 is our goal, so that's this line right here between the red and yellow. So you can see we're trending in the right direction. We're still not there yet. We still have a ways to go, but the trend is positive. So any questions about the phosphorus annual report? Other questions?
Does this include Project Clarity then?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. All right, moving on. Want to give you a brief overview of the Watershed Annual Meeting. I know some of you were there. We did have 2 groups of Hope College students give presentations on research that I thought were very interesting. So there's the 6 students there. one report or one study was on plastics in Lake Macatawa sediments, and they found plastics in every single sediment sample that they collected. The most common being fibers, so potentially from clothing. And so it's very interesting, the correlations that they found higher concentrations by the Holland State Park and near downtown Holland, kind of more where industrial land uses are. But their full paper will hopefully be provided to us soon. They're still working through the end of the semester sort of things, but we do have their PowerPoint presentation is up on our website currently, along with a video of the full meeting. And then the second group looked at mushrooms as indicators of heavy metal in soil contamination. Mushrooms are known to bioaccumulate heavy metals. They pull it out of the soil. They have really long root systems. They're not really roots, but that can pull heavy metals out of the soil. So they were able to collect mushrooms from several kind of known contaminated sites and perceived clean sites. And they really weren't able to draw any clear conclusions from their work, but they had some concerns about the instrumentation they used not being sensitive enough to pick up concentrations, but they did not find any concentrations that we would be concerned about. But they did suggest some ways to improve that. So very interesting work that they did. The presentations are on our website if you're interested. And then our Watershed Stakeholder of the Year this year was awarded to the Hope College Day 1 Watershed Research Community. If you are not familiar with this group, they are doing amazing work in the watershed. They take incoming freshmen and put them into a community. They come to classes a week before the rest of the population, so they get to know the campus, the area, and each other kind of in a fun, casual way before they get into classes. They go kayaking together, they start collecting water samples and learning lab techniques before classes even start. They live together in the same facility, they have classes together, and this takes them through their first couple years, and hopefully they're retained in some kind of science, technology, engineering, or math field. It's really the hope of the program. But they go out and take weekly water quality samples from the watershed from various locations in the lake and in stream. They have a full year's worth of data that they've collected, and we're waiting to get a published report from them. They certainly have presented the results of that information, but a lot of what they're doing is surrounding E. coli, DNA sequencing E. coli, trying to figure out what are our E. coli communities in the watershed, which will help us to manage the water quality issues much better, much more efficiently than we could without that data. So the work that they are doing now is going to help us long term with making management decisions on how we address water quality issues. And then plus some of the students, so this picture here is the current students, some of their former students that were in the program the last couple years, and then there's some staff and faculty. And then these are the 3 faculty members that run the program at Hope College. Some of the students pictured here also volunteered with us doing road stream crossings earlier this summer. So not only are they just immersed in this wonderful program, but they're interacting with us in other ways as well. So we thought they were very deserving recipients. Any other thoughts, comments about the annual meeting from anybody that was there? We did have some other presentations from a Grand Valley graduate student and Project Clarity update and monitoring report.
I think it's just a great community resource that the college is willing to partner with us and provide a lot of free labor. I mean, it's a great learning experience for the students. And obviously you see the passion that they have for their environment that they live in and what they want to protect in long term. And that's our goal. So I think it's it's a very deserving group and an excited bunch of kids. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you go to Hope College's website and you search Day 1 Watershed, there's like a 4-minute video that kind of introduces you to the program. That's really, the students are in it, so you can kind of hear firsthand from them. So I'd highly encourage you to watch that if you're not familiar with the program.
Yeah, that's a great video, and it makes you all excited to put on hip boots, which is quite a thing.
Yeah.
But it tells you how important video is in communicating the whole thing. And it's great, you know, football teams have always had this, come early, spend the week together, get to know each other, and really have that basis of your team for the whole year. And now, you know, you can be a science team. So it's a brilliant way to really help kids connect and give back to the community and the college and their future careers. So it's wonderful.
I just wonder how they do two-a-days in science. I got one quick question though.
Yeah.
What interests me was about the mushrooms. They flourish with heavy metals. So if there's an EPA site, are there mushrooms all around, or is that too much for them? And I mean, how much tolerance do they have to heavy metal pollution?
I don't know. That's a good question. I'm sure the students could answer that question for you.
They tested by the landfill, did they not, on Riley Street? The
Yeah, they
landfill?
did collect them there. They collected them from the dredge placement facility, and then I forget, there was a third site. And then they had 2 like parks that they collected. Yeah, I don't know that they flourish, they just will take up metals out of the soil. And because other studies have shown higher concentrations of metals in mushroom tissue than in the soil. So their research question was really, can we just test mushrooms, because it's easier to collect mushrooms and process those samples than to test the heavy metals in the soil. So it's maybe a quicker, cheaper way to test a site for heavy metal contamination as opposed to doing the soil analysis. But they did not actually test the soil to see if there was a correlation between the concentrations in the mushroom and the concentration in the soil. So that was a limitation that they noted. Yeah. Yeah, it is. They do some great work at Hope College.
All right, Kelly, do you want to comment about the annual report?
Yeah,
then?
so the annual report was in your packet. So just a few highlights that I wanted to run through. On the outreach and education side, I mean, that's kind of our main focus in the watershed program, especially through the summer months. We did 15 community events over the past year, many of which were made much easier on Carolyn and I by the fact that we had a couple interns working with us for the summer, Tony and Madeline. They helped us out at, I think, pretty much all of these community events, so that alleviated some of the time pressure off of Carolyn and myself, so we were able to do a little bit more. We did 5 presentations to various groups about the watershed and watershed issues. We had 7 volunteer stream events, which included both the macroinvertebrate sampling and the road stream crossings, the 2 river cleanups, and then those 9 events together, over 120 volunteers. And I would draw your attention to the middle of the report where we have a bunch of pictures of volunteers. I think this was at least since I've been here, this was our best volunteer year in terms of that sheer number of volunteers. Weather certainly cooperated with us this year. Plus, we had some groups that we had not worked with in the past. There is a picture of the group from Hope College there. We partnered with Initech, a group of employees came out, like 30 of them, and spent a day with us doing road stream crossings. And so we had some great volunteer partnerships this year. And then, of course, we gave away quite a few of our materials at the community events. On the stormwater management side of things, again, just very briefly, we did complete the SAW grant, that Stormwater Asset Management and Wastewater Grant, in 2017. There's the numbers there for the total dollar amounts. And then the main goal of that was to complete a stormwater management plan that will assist our communities in maintaining compliance with their stormwater permits from the state. So that was approved by the DEQ SAW people. We still are working through the permit components with the DEQ Stormwater Division. So that's still an ongoing process. I mean, the bulk of the work was done under the grant, but we're still doing some revisions based on DEQ comments back on the portions that pertain to the stormwater permits. So that's still kind of ongoing at this point. But we would have to do that regardless of whether we had a grant or not. And then the Community Foundation grant we received in December of 2016. That project was not completed as of the end of the fiscal year, which this report does reflect the fiscal year. The Community Foundation project is finished now, but again, there's the numbers there, so we were able to complete that, the green stormwater suitability mapping project, the community conversation. We did finish that green stormwater vision document in December, and then we held the seminar, which I think was really a highlight of the summer, having that green infrastructure seminar in Holland. So a lot going on in the stormwater program this year. And then in the agricultural program, a lot of numbers up here. And that's what we deal in is numbers as far as acres and dollars. So we did finish the Great Lakes Commission grant. We had a final report on that, I think a couple months ago. So the numbers are there. These numbers here represent the entire grant, not just 2017. But then with the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative and Project Clarity, those are just fiscal year 2017 numbers. So again, I'm not going to read all those numbers. You can read the numbers if you're a numbers people, but a lot of good work was happening in agriculture, a lot of numbers that we keep track of. And then there's a few other things in the report as well, but any questions overall about the report or anything that's up here?
Kelly, having attended a couple of your events, I would say you hit it on the head. A lot of good work has been done, and you've been at the heart of that. So really a great year and well done. Yeah. All right, Rob?
All right, well, thank you, Kelly. This kind of sets us up for what I want to touch on with the ag program. And you'll notice how Kelly had mentioned it's FY17, which ends in September. In October, we had quite a bit going on. So this is in regards to our Great Lakes Restoration Initiative grant. If you'll recall, this is a grant that's funded by the EPA with match provided from Project Clarity. Currently, we've got 22 growers participating and with over 8,800 acres to be implemented over the duration of the grant. To date, we have reimbursed farmers just over $110,000. So this is where whenever we talk about the end of the year or the end of the year report that we have, I always try to clarify that the cropping year doesn't always line up with our fiscal year. So you'll notice here this cropping year we've had almost 1,500 acres of cover crops implemented, just over 600 acres of gypsum, and then residue management. I think the number there said 444. This could be a typo here, but 440 acres of residue management there. And then our Wascob, where we're capturing 54 acres of runoff. So you'll notice a little bit of a difference between our contracted acres, what we've implemented, and what's been contracted. Most of these acres are gypsum application. There was a supply issue this fall with the dry October. We had a lot of those acres were applied, and some of those tons of gypsum were funded through Project Clarity and not on our Great Lakes Restoration Grant. This is a map that Dan Callum at the Outdoor Discovery Center created. You'll notice in the next map I'm going to show you that his GIS skills are much better than mine. So I wanted to show this. The green here are the fields where we've implemented practices, and the yellow is the available agricultural land. This will give you kind of an idea of what Project Clarity has done with their funds. These funds actually include Project Clarity dollars, our Great Lakes Commission grant dollars, and our Great Lakes Restoration Initiative dollars. So these dark green shapes are representing fields that have had best management practices placed on them from those sources of funding. And then I want to touch now on just what we've done in 2017 on our Great Lakes Restoration Initiative grant. You'll see our 3 priority subwatersheds, Peters Creek, Upper MACC, and North Branch. And you'll notice most of our work is focused, most of the work I've been doing is focused in this Peters Creek area. In In North Branch, we've reimbursed growers for best management practices on around 7% of the available agricultural land. It's about 8% in Upper Mac, and in Peters Creek, it's just a little bit over 25% of the available agricultural land has had some best management practice placed on it. Either cover crops, this dark. The gypsum application doesn't show up real well on here. But yeah, most of it's been cover crops, some residue management, and then the gypsum, of course.
What does the gypsum do? Does that reduce phosphorus?
It's an amendment that goes. It's a soil amendment, and it helps increase water infiltration into the soil. So we're reducing some runoff. And then this top picture, I've showed this before. This was a wasp cob that we helped. Holland Engineering helped design it. We helped pay for this. This is in Overijssel Township, and you'll notice this past fall we filled it right up. This was over, I think we had about a 2-day rain total of just over 4.5 inches. In 48 hours, this looked like that. It was completely empty. I walked through it and noticed some of the silty residue left on sorry, Carolyn, get out of your way. Some silty residue left on the vegetation. Yeah, and it operated as it was supposed to. We didn't have any pooling or ponding of water upstream, which was nice to see. And then just, I think I've showed these before too, but a couple cover crop fields and then some of our gypsum and the truck that they used to apply that gypsum. Any questions?
Rob, thank you. I can tell you're making a difference. I think your connection with the farm community has paid a lot of benefits, so thank you for your work. All right. Community Enhancement Program, Steve.
Yes, I am pleased to announce the first round of grants that have been awarded by the Community Enhancement Board. So, as soon as we get that pulled up. There are 3 of them that are being announced today. The first of which is a $5,000 grant that's been awarded to the Holland Symphony, Creating Access Project. So the Holland Symphony does a family concert in the spring. This year it's going to be Peter and the Wolf. And they're taking the funding being provided by the CEP board to kind of enhance that and try to reach some population and population segments that haven't normally participated in that. So they've partnered with 5 different community organizations to help make that happen. So they're purchasing bilingual children's book with the Peter and the Wolf story and distributing those through Ready for School and their connections to the underserved population. There's going to be underwriting of tickets. There's going to be transportation provided to the event for those who have transportation barriers. So a really great program where they've extended it and collaborated to try to provide more access to that event. The second award, also $5,000, was given to the Friends of the Felt Estate. Patty Meyer, who is the director of the Friends of the Felt Estate, submitted an application, and that $5,000 is going to be used for 3 things. One, to create a brochure of historic house sites. So the Felt Mansion certainly, as well as the Capon House will be included in that, and it actually extends out to some historic homes up in Muskegon and Grand Rapids. So that's one component of it. Another is to develop a website that is going to contain information on historical sites in all the MACC member areas. So you or someone in your organization can expect a call from Patty, who will be speaking with you about and identifying the historic sites that you want included in that particular website. So that'll be a very comprehensive and one-stop shop for folks who want to know about historical and cultural sites that we have here in the MACC area. And then also to kind of keep up with current technology, that'll be converted into an app as well for people to use. And then lastly, $5,500 has been awarded to the Historic Ottawa Beach Society. They are going to be putting a window shade system in the Pump House Museum there on Ottawa Beach Road, and the first exhibit that they're holding there is going to be an exhibit around Big Red Lighthouse. So that certainly supports that exhibit, and of course all subsequent exhibits as well. So it was, I think, and there are a couple members of the board here as well, and you can speak to this process. I mean, we're kind of working our way through, this process and how we're going to move forward. I mean, we have our bylaws set and so forth, but until you get real requests from organizations, and it makes you kind of have to work out, what is regional in nature and what is something that we can make a meaningful difference in and not, and so forth. So, but I think the group did really well. Ken and Glenn have been sitting in on those conversations. I don't know if they want to add anything or not regarding this, but I'm excited about it, having worked on it first with the Service Delivery Committee, and now with this group as well, and I'm pleased with where we're at, and looking forward to the next round of applications. We're accepting those now, and Russ as well is on that board, sorry. And, looking forward to see what comes in, and we intend to do another round of grants in March. Russ, Glenn, Ken, anything you want to add?
Russ is our spokesman.
Ken was speaking right up, so that's good.
All right. Thank you, Steve.
Yep.
All right, a few comments on our budget, I think.
That's right. Included in your agenda packet was expenditures through November, so we're just getting started in our fiscal year. This takes care and cleans up a couple of those line items with a budget amendment that you approved last month. Revenues are sitting currently at 36.7%, expenditures at 16.2%. Be happy to answer any questions you have regarding the report.
Audit comes out next month.
Yep, you'll have exactly a presentation from the auditor. The draft has been provided, a spoiler here, but it's a clean audit again, and so the auditor will be joining us at our January meeting to discuss that.
I'm reading it closely, Steve.
All right. David's one of those guys who, when I said, hey, the draft's available, okay, I'll take a copy.
All right, Executive Committee.
The report was also included in your agenda packet. Be happy to answer any questions regarding that report.
All right, we're going to turn to our host.
But we've got one thing.
What, did I forget?
It's the day of annual report. So at your place setting was the MACC, or the overall agency annual report. Most or all of the items that are included in this document you've heard about probably from staff reports throughout the past year, but we like to bring them all together, and at least, it's certainly not exhaustive of all the work that staff is doing, but we try to hit some of the highlights, and certainly I hope you agree with our perception and assessment that it was another great year, and be happy to answer any questions regarding this. If you'd like additional copies to take back to your shop, let us know and we'll get them to you.
Welcome to MACC. Before I go to Howard, I might just welcome Jack Thompson. Jack and his wife Jill are recent residents to Park Township. He and I became acquainted when we were at our efforts through Holland Hospital. Thankfully, we didn't hurt anybody when we were there, but we were there. And Jack is new to the area, but he's not new at all to governmental service. And he comes from Gaylord, where he was very involved in community affairs and governmental service. Didn't take too long, and he was asking, well, how do things work, and how does this work? And so I welcome you to MACC, and appreciate your interest. He's been at watershed meetings, I believe, as well. So, yeah. Howard.
All right, well, welcome to Port Sheldon Township. Thanks for coming out today. I don't have a whole lot to report. The Road Commission did a few miles of chip seal for us last year in the township on the local roads. And I think that really does help preserve the life of the road. They seem to be working well. They also did one of the primary roads, segment on Lakeshore Avenue from Butternut Drive to Croswell, and that turned out very nice. We've got a project at Winds Nest Park. It's one of the township parks behind, it lays directly west of Consumers Energy. I might have reported on that before, but we're going to have some improvements down there this coming year. We were awarded a grant through the NR Trust Fund for a good portion of that. We were awarded $300,000 towards that project, so we're excited about that. The lake levels keep rising. The DEQ permit has been difficult to obtain. We're able to do less and less and less. We had the boardwalk going almost to the lake with some mats, but now that has to be pulled back. Prine and Newhoff is working on that for us. Did some LED lighting in the parking lot, helped save some energy, but also it's a beautiful lighting system. He's not here today, but Walters Electric did it for us, and they did a great job, so. I don't know if I mentioned it before, we have a building inspector that we share with Park Township, Eric Davis, and that arrangement's working really, really well. The previous inspector we had, Nate Pertun, was lured away by Holland City, and we're very happy for him. It was a better opportunity, full-time, but I think he enjoys it in Holland City. And last but not least, we're losing our clerk after 28 and a half years. Catherine Borst is retiring the first of the year. And we have already appointed a new clerk to fill the remainder of her term. It's Township President. Her name is Teresa DeGraff. She comes to us. She's leaving a job at Hope College and going to be Kathy's replacement. So if anyone's interested, we're having an open house here a week from Wednesday for Kathy, the 27th from 6 till 8. So that's all I have. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, thank you for hosting, Howard. Other member comments? Thank you, staff. Stephen, do you want to just give us a farewell?
Absolutely. On behalf of the entire MACC staff, we want to wish you all a very Merry Christmas.
Thank you. You too.
All right.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you. Happy holidays.
Next meeting. January 22, Park Township.